I don't think it's his real name.
I wonder what's the origins of evil. Yeah,
I think he says on the documentary.
how he got
I
that
think
name.
so.
Huh.
Did you ever see that documentary about Evel Knievel?
No.
He missed a whole lot more jumps than he made because he was jumping on an old Harley. Can you imagine making those jumps on a Harley?
Yeah.
Wow.
What's
That's crazy.
You think on the suspension?
I can't, if that. On an old one? I mean, what was he, like a shovel head, a pan head? What was he jumping back then? I don't know.
It was a Harley.
Brutal. Yeah. But have you seen that guy jump to the top of the Arc de Triomphe in Vegas? Matheson, what's his name? Yeah, but this is like the replica of it in Vegas. You know how they make a replica and everything?
Yeah.
But he jumped a motorcycle like 10 stories and landed on the roof, which is impressive enough as it is, but then he came back off of the roof onto another ramp, free falling, and caught the ramp and made it. Like he kind of stumbled on the landing, but he lived. Robbie Matheson or something. It was like a Red Bull thing probably.
Okay.
But yeah, he came. He rode the bike around the edge on the top, the very top parapet or whatever of the roof, and they see him. You show him with a helmet cam looking over the edge, and it's 10 stories or whatever, and he's on this dirt bike. Then he pops down back off of it and goes to the other side of it and kicks it. And no, he didn't either. He just kind of came off the edge of it. He came off real smooth and then gave it some gas coming off and popped the front end up. And then he just let it naturally nose down and caught that ramp. And his wife was on the ground watching, like they were on close up on a camera. Can you imagine if he'd have died? We'd have seen that live. This was live,
Life insurance policy.
Something. Oh, I'm sure Red Bull would have taken good care of her.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what she was hoping for. He's been an asshole lately. I'm gonna take that $10 million or whatever. I mean, she'd get paid for that without any kind of, for sure, and a new husband.
Yeah.
Her choice probably at that point, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
My wife would knock me off for 10.
For 10, yeah.
For $10 million?
I bet my wife probably knocked me.
I might knock myself off if I knew my wife would get $10
And
million.
then be straight for the rest of her life. I would, yeah.
Maybe I'd like to have another 10 years or so, but at some point in time, it's like I'm not contributing much anyways.
Right.
I'm definitely going to be an old dad. I'm already an old dad,
Take
so
the money and run, baby.
take the money and run.
Take the money and run.
I've said for years, I've told my wife and family that, we're rolling.
Take the money and run.
I'm not going to tell that one on there. Never mind. I'm going to skirt. That was an off-air conversation right there. Wow. Well, since I blurted it right out that we're on the air, here we are. It's Vendor Chronicles once again at that 86 Kids Studio.
Shout out that 86 Kids Studio.
Shout out that 86 Kids Studio. Huntsville, Alabama, the beautiful city. It really is beautiful out there, too. Fall in Huntsville is it's just beautiful here. Absolutely gorgeous.
Especially
I've got to be in
this
Birmingham. Yeah, for sure. I've got to be in Birmingham in a couple of weeks downtown for a show. And it's a lot of buildings that are all the same color downtown Birmingham. I don't want to, I don't want to talk smack about somebody's town or whatever. But
what Trump called Haiti? I don't know. And I don't know if I want to. Remember where Trump said Haiti was a shithole?
Oh, yeah.
You don't remember him saying that? He got a lot of flack about it. But have you seen
called
Haiti? I mean, he was telling the truth.
Is it a shithole? I don't know anything about it.
It really is.
Really?
That's what I think about Birmingham.
I'd
be ready to leave Birmingham every time I go.
I got to be honest. I feel the same way about Birmingham as far as being ready to leave. I don't know if I'm gonna call it a shithole.
I think they're number one on homicides this year. Birmingham, in the nation. Birmingham is off the chain right now. Just from a crimes point of view, it's sketchy.
So there was a shooting.
I'm gonna get canceled for that.
There was a shooting when I was down there for a show. The same show that I'm doing now.
Topic for just me.
Pretty sure it was last year. No, that's good.
I don't know. I'm listening. I'm tuned in as well.
Stories. Thank you, Q.
We got a guess.
Well, it wasn't me that shot, so forget that story.
It was you that was shot. Yeah.
So, here we are. We have a guest. This is a special
Gepisode.
We were actually rolling. We might have to cut some of this out.
Gepisode. There you go.
A Gepisode.
That's good. That's good.
So we're here with our old friend / new friend of a friend, Ase. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Introduce yourself, if you will, please, so we know how to make sure we're doing it right.
Yeah, so I go by Ase. Let me do that again. I go by Ase. There's a feed. Selah.
Ase Selah.
Ashe means that you speak things into existence. So it is a manifestation, activation, similar to what you say at the end of a prayer, amen. And Selah closes it out. So shall it be is what it stands for. So my name literally means whatever I say I'm going to do and put forth is going to happen.
Wow.
Real deep, real fast.
That was a hell of a
I love
picture.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you.
So what origin is that name?
The Yoruba from Nigeria.
Yoruba from Nigeria.
Yeah, Yoruba, Nigeria.
Yoruba, Nigeria.
Yep.
Now, are you Nigerian? Like, or your ancestry? Like, is that where your family's from?
So here we go. I guess we're going to get into it. I don't have any direct connections to Nigeria as of what I know now, but a part of my practice as I'm going through my artistic career is finding out exactly where I come from. But I do know I have roots from West Africa. Nigeria has been one of those areas that has always sort of stuck with me. It's always been in my unconscious mind. So I did a lot of studying in that area in terms of the culture and practices and what they stand for as a community, as a group of people. And the word Ashe was one of those things that always popped up unconsciously, just everywhere. And I never really paid attention to it until I say, let me look more deeper into this word. And so that's where it was sort of culminated from. And I put a point there, and then you can just, I guess, ask me whatever else you want.
So go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
What is it about the Nigerian culture specifically that draws you to it?
I think it was,
or maybe there's not specific. Maybe there's just a vibe. I mean, it could be, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always been friends with people from the African community. I've always looked into strong-rooted spiritual essence. Nigeria has that, in my opinion. And as I was looking into some of the similarities of Black America, Nigerians have some of the more prominent reflections when it comes down to the things we do in our culture here and over there. And while I am in Chicago for my master's in fine arts program, I would meet particular people from the Nigerian community, and they would say, "Hey, are you Nigerian?" They would always ask me that, and I'm like, "No, I don't think so." But it was always fascinating, and I would ask them why. And it's like, well, you dress a certain way that really reminds me of home, and just the way you carry yourself, I would have assumed that that's where you were from. So I said, let me look into this. That's very fascinating, you know. So that's kind of where it all really started unraveling for me. Yeah.
I liked it.
You also said like you got roots in West Africa.
Yeah. So
is that genetically, like you did a 23andMe type thing, and it was like, oh, he's, whatever.
So I'm taking the untraditional route, or I would say the traditional route, where I am going through the census, looking at documentation from family, old letters, old photographs from family, and I'm digging up all these archives to piece the puzzle together. I think I prefer that more than giving my DNA to some company that's doing whatever. I just heard that 23andMe just had a data breach, and now that they're using people's DNA. Yeah, they did. Now people's DNA is being, we don't know what they're doing, probably sending the DNA to a clone lab or something, but so that's what I'm doing. I'm going through the traditional route of going through documentation, just really having my hands in it all. And so to answer your question, a lot of my family are from the South Carolina, the Carolinas in general, Georgia, Florida area where the Gullah Geechee group of people were settled. And so those are direct connections to West Africa. You have Angola and a couple other groups mixed with, Native American or Black Seminole Indians. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm going to kind of get on the soapbox a little bit. But like, I think with those like DNA, we can trace your ancestry. I think I think in the future, the people that do those, like I said, I believe they're selling your DNA for one to a lot of places. You know, information. You know, and they've gotten so good with the genome or with your DNA that they can like predict like different diseases you're going to get when you get older, or that you're predisposed to. Oh, he's predisposed to diabetes. Oh, he's predisposed to high cholesterol and stuff like that. You know, so imagine insurance already outrageous. So imagine when these insurance companies be like, "Hey, can you give me the DNA on so and so we can see like what this guy?" Right? Yeah, predict what how much money we might have to spend on this guy.
Right.
You know, as he ages. You know. Okay, I'm gonna get off that soapbox.
Bioweapons.
Bioweapon.
You know.
What can we put out there that we know will affect this guy? Yeah. Maybe not affect these people. You know,
it's
target
scary.
You that way. It is scary, man, when you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, but so with you tracing your heritage and your ancestry, how far have you gotten back?
1600s. Yeah. And I've got down to a single individual, a young lady, who was Native American, which is fascinating within itself. Labeled black on the documents. And so she was in the Carolinas, which she would have identified as Gullah or Geechee. Yeah, so
like I have a real theory, and I kind of shared it with Shane, that I think black people here are the Native Americans.
Expound.
I said the same thing, by the way.
Okay.
Expound. So, for one, I don't think they were able to, like, if you look at how many slaves they brought to the Americas, I think they say like 10 million people.
Yeah.
I don't think it was possible to bring 10 million people over here. You know, especially back then. It'd be a feat to transport 10 million people now.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And you got to think, oh, we packed in these boats like sardines. For one, are we willing to go? You know, how many men you think would be willing to get on those boats?
We were masters of war.
You know,
or military.
Oh well, they used your people to catch you over there. Come on, man, really?
Yeah. They said the Moors had something to do with it.
Oh man, no. I mean, give me liberty or give me death. You know, I'm pretty sure we still had that same attitude back then, especially trying to take me from my home.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
But here, I think it's just another way to divide us from this land. To say, oh, you came from somewhere else.
That's an interesting thing to talk about. And I'll give a little blurb on it and some suspicions I might have in terms of the voyage of water. You have to be really comfortable and masters of the water in order to take hundreds of thousands of individuals and continue to be successful at it consistently without having any damage to a ship. We talking about what was it, 80,000 every other ship, every trip or every 2 trips?
80,000 people on a ship?
Every other, like 2 ships. I think it was, when I looked at some documents, it was around that much numbers.
40,000 a ship.
40,000 a ship. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but
no, I'm just curious. That's a huge.
And that's a huge number.
That's a huge number if that's accurate.
You think it's on like a Carnival cruise?
Oh, I've been on a Carnival cruise.
And that boat is huge.
Yeah, I want to say like, I think maybe on the very biggest ones, like 5,000 and then 3,000 crew. There's probably close to 10,000 people on the very biggest one. Well, I mean, think about an aircraft carrier. How many people are on an aircraft carrier? It's a floating city. It's a floating city. There's a lot of people on a carrier. At least 5,000, right? At least. Living there all,
correct,
they
correct.
Do
Working
for them. Yeah, so, but these are people that are supposedly in humane conditions. If you had people stacked like cordwood, I don't want to be disrespectful, but it is, sardines, sure. You know, if you were packing people in as though they were a commodity rather than a human being, which we know is what happened.
Okay, yeah, I was way off of that number. It says, according to the internet, 600 per ship.
600 per ship. But here's the thing. How long did this go on?
100 years, maybe?
Yeah.
100 years?
I would say.
So if you start doing that math over 100 years, let's take 1 year. Let's say there were 10 ships. each of those 10 ships had 600 people on them.
Approximately 300 years.
300 years it went on?
Transportation.
Well, I could see 10 million in 300 years for sure. Let's say 10 ships a year, 600 people per ship. That's 6,000 people per year. Over 100 years, that's 60,000 people. Well, that math ain't adding up, is it? It ain't adding up at all.
Consider the ones who revolted. And the ones
a lot of people died.
That too.
Right.
So, but it is interesting because there are, they find DNA of, bones that belong to black people who were here that predated the slave trade. They have pyramids and all these sorts of things throughout, even in Memphis and the Grand Canyon, all over the states, especially the Appalachian Mountains. There's pyramids there as well. So it's really like, okay, what's going on here? But not to be a conspiracy theorist, but it's questionable.
Everything's a conspiracy theory until it gets proven to be true, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we look at and we're like, oh, but at one point that was a conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
There's terrorists going to hijack airplanes. Man, please. What?
With a box knife.
With a box knife.
I feel that you crashed this plane with a box blade. I don't want to go to a whole other subject, back to what you said, but you was able to trace your ancestry to what we would say a Native American.
Yeah.
And you're defined as a black man.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
So back to my theory, I think we are the natives, the black people of this land.
Yeah. I can't argue. I can't. A lot of black people say, I got Indian in my blood. That's something that we like to say a lot.
Yeah, we do. Oh, you got that good hair. Oh, you got some Indian in you. You got that good hair. You got Indian in you.
Yep.
But that's kind of ubiquitous. White people say the same thing. Like everybody I know is part Cherokee.
Mm-hmm.
We're part Cherokee. That's what I have somebody Cherokee.
What they call a $5 Indian. You ever heard that coin?
No.
I learned that as well.
You know about the $5 Indian. Yeah, because they was giving a lot of benefits to, we say Indian, but Native Americans.
Right.
If you can prove that you had Native American blood in you. So people go pay $5 to whoever can sign off to say that you're Native American. You could be damn white as snow.
You get benefits.
But as long as I get this guy the $5, you know what I'm saying, to put me on the sign me off, I got access to this land or whatever. You get what I'm saying?
Get some of that casino money we talked about.
Exactly. The $5 Indian.
Yeah.
Shane, you might be a $5 Indian.
Might be.
You better go get your you better go get your
I think it's probably the only way I would be Indian. I don't think maybe, but it'd go way back, I think.
Yeah.
So tell us a story. We kind of went on a little tangent.
Yeah. What do y'all want to hear?
I don't know. So I read through your bio. It says you're from Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
What specific area of Connecticut?
So most people don't know I was actually born in Georgia. I claim Connecticut because throughout my adolescence, I had more of my learning years in Connecticut that taught me how to be a man. So I feel like I'm more connected to Connecticut because of the survival that I had to endure during my upbringing. But I was born in Hahira, Georgia.
Hiram?
Hahira.
Mm-hmm. Hahira. I never heard.
Small town, South Georgia, next to Valdosta, Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah, area code 229. Yeah. So I lived there, red clay, similar to Huntsville, red clay. And so a lot of things happened during my childhood that were traumatic. And my mother was going through a divorce. And so she left Connecticut because of the violence. She lost family members to the drug game. And she fled Connecticut because of the traumatic, weight. And so she met my father, and his family lived in Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia. So that's how we ended up in Georgia. I wasn't born yet. When I was born, it was Hahira. So moving forward, during that time of discomfort, we didn't have a place to live. We were houseless. So we had to figure some things out. We ended up traveling to Connecticut. And that's where I was around 15 years old, I would say. And I had to learn how to survive on my own a bit. So I was sleeping on family members' sofa for a while, trying to get through school, make sure my credits were good to graduate. So I had to deal with all of that and try to survive the streets of New Haven, Bridgeport. I was bouncing back between Bridgeport, Connecticut and New Haven, Connecticut. Most of my family from the north is from Bridgeport, Connecticut. The PT Projects is what they called it. PT in Barnum. So one of the most ruthless projects there is in Connecticut. So during that time, it was a cultural shock to me. Have you ever seen the movie Lean on Me? School is just like that, a replica. I saw kids my age walking in school with blades in their mouth, slicing people, giving them $1.50 in front of my face, selling drugs in the hallway.
They call it $1.50 like from ear to ear, typically.
Yeah, just slicing like
ear to ear. We call it $1.50.
Yeah.
Because I think like 360 degrees would be all the way around, but you only going like 150 degrees. Ear to ear.
Okay.
Yeah, so I saw some pretty crazy things. So it was a cultural shock. I had to learn how to keep my head on the swivel. I was in an area where the gang, the Bloods, you know about the Bloods, right? Okay, cool. Sure. So that was the area I was pretty much surviving in, Hancock Avenue in Bridgeport, full of Bloods. But some of the rival gangs sort of like took me in a way where they didn't mess with me because they said I looked like Ace Hood in Bridgeport, this rapper called Ace Hood. Okay. So they used to call me, "What up, Ace Hood? What up, Ace Hood?" So I would always like not have any static or issues because of the familiarity with celebrity. I don't know what that was about in terms of them wanting to keep me safe, but that was a blessing from God.
So you never had to join the gang?
Nah, I never had to join the gang. There were times where I had to make decisions to choose, but ultimately I didn't have to do anything that was going to get me killed. Well, let me not say that, because I was in a lot of sticky situations where I was almost killed quite a few times. But for the sake of the podcast, I'll say I was smart enough to make decisions where I did not put myself into a situation that would allow me to be unalived. So from Bridgeport, I learned the lay of the land. I learned to act as if I was from there. I learned to act as if I knew where I was going at all times. I learned to protect myself by any means possible. And I won't go into details on that, but I learned how to survive. I learned how to make money for myself so that way I can have food on my stomach. And that was until I was able to graduate. I would go see my mom in New Haven quite often just to check on her and my sisters, make sure she was good, getting on her feet, that sort of thing. And whenever she could help out, she would, a couple dollars here and there, that sort of thing. So I ended up getting a job at a young age, just sort of like, trying to make my way. And I ended.
What was your first job?
My first job was working at Walmart. Yeah, I was working at Walmart. But that didn't happen until I moved to New Haven. So I ended up moving to New Haven because Bridgeport was just getting really crazy. And then
now, is Bridgeport, New Haven, are they bordering towns?
Like 30 minutes away from each other.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You got to hit the bridge in order to get to that section. Mm-hmm. But as we talk about Birmingham, Bridgeport still is. It's just, it's very grimy. It's very, very grimy. Shootouts all the time. People go missing all the time. Yeah. Very, very traumatic. And so, I don't know. I just felt like I had to be 10 years older than what I was at the time. So anyway, moved to New Haven, got a legitimate job that was,
How old are you? You got there when you was 15, right?
Yeah. So by the time I got a job, I was around 21, 20.
Okay, so this after graduation, post-graduation.
Post-graduation.
Okay.
Yes, I am missing some pieces.
Right.
So I went to Bassick High School in Bridgeport. That's the school that was like lean on me. And then from there, I moved my, what year was it? I think it was 11th grade I moved. And yeah, it was the 11th grade I moved from Bridgeport, and then I moved over to New Haven. My uncle, my mom's brother, he took me in for a bit. So I stayed with him for a little while until I could like figure things out. And I ended up going to James Hill House in New Haven. And from there, I got my credits together. I was still sort of doodling in my notebooks, drawing on my math test, stuff like that. And my teachers would notice like that's the thing that I would really do. I wasn't talking much. I kind of stayed to myself. That has always been the thing for me growing up. But anyway, my art teacher, she would pour into me. She would figure out how to get me out of my core classes to have me go back to her classroom and give me projects. Miss Burton.
Shout out Miss Burton.
Yeah. Yeah. She definitely saved my life. Yep. So weirdly enough, when I moved to New Haven, again, I ended up in another blood territory. I was living in an area called the Tray, and that's nothing but Bloods. So I found
think about gangs, the Bloods being in Connecticut. I'm sorry, I've never been up there, of course. So I'm not judging whatever you think of that as a West Coast thing, and to realize they've penetrated even into places like that.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking about fishermen, and I don't know anything about Connecticut, but
it's like DC. Once you go past the White House, you have nothing but the slums.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
You have Yale, that's downtown on Broadway, and then once you get past that, you start getting into the territories. So you got the Hill, the Tray, the Ville, the R2. It's the Jungle. There's different little sections where people just do their thing.
Yale's an Ivy League school, right?
Yes.
But so like the surrounding areas of Yale are pretty
rough.
Pretty rough.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, but Ivy League school and then slums all around it.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's very weird. But my art teacher would pour into me.
You ever been to Tuscaloosa?
Oh yeah.
Just outside of the campus of Tuscaloosa is not exactly the nicest place to live either.
Yeah.
A lot of projects down there, and folks that maybe could use some of that football money. Quite frankly, What?
Yeah, and I'm sure they're dying to get to it too.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So eventually, I ended up finding a friend group that didn't seem like they were active in all the rigmarole in the streets. And I found to explore things I never was exposed to. Like I used to rollerblade with these guys, you know what I mean? Picked up a pair of rollerblades, go hit the streets, clear my mind. A few of them were artists, so they were painters, fashion designers by heart. So just creating their own clothing because they couldn't afford anything else, and they would wear it to school and it would be fly. And so I would cling to those guys because they were different. They weren't trying to be tough. They weren't trying to be hard. They weren't picking trouble with no one. And that's kind of the thing I wanted for myself. So I stayed to myself. And fair enough, when I got to New Haven, hey, what's up, Wheezy? They would call me Wheezy, Lil Wayne.
Hey, Wheezy.
Now I'm Wheezy. So then I had this sort of connection with the streets where I wasn't being bothered. You know what I mean? Whenever I would go around in the area, they would associate me with the Bloods because that's where I stayed at. And when you're in those areas, you wear those colors. So I dealt with that. I got into some situations too with that, but ultimately, I think that school saved me from getting into things I couldn't get myself out of. I remember one night, one of the people from the community, this old head from the community, I had a routine. I had a route that I would walk so that way I didn't get any static on my way home. And I wore my headphones to just tune out. And then he checked me one day. He came off the porch. He was like, "Hey, youngin', you need to start wearing your headphones around here. Like, I see you around, but, you need to keep your head on the swivel. Like, don't get too comfortable out here." You know what I mean? I was like, all right, cool. Sure enough, the next day, that whole block was taped off because it was a shootout from a rival gang, and they shot the whole area up with semi-automatics, and that was the route that I usually go. For some reason, something happened that day that prevented me from getting there right before the incident happened. So, it was this crazy occurrences that took place that saved my life. But Ms. Burton talked to me. She was like, hey, you should probably like join the chess club. That was a thing they had going on in the school to, help you think critically and things like that. So I did. The friend group that I was like rollerblading with, they all agreed to do it too. We all wanted to be thinkers and figure out how to get out of this hood, So we did that. And the chess teacher was like, man, I know this program that y'all might be interested in called CCY. They hold that, they used to hold it at Wesleyan University. This is around the time where like Kanye wasn't crazy or seemed crazy. So he was like the hottest thing out, and he would go there and do like lectures, seminars, and things like that. You had high level people going to that particular program to pour into young artists.
What did CCY stand for?
Oh, creative something for the youth.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we were able to get into the program for free because we were underprivileged students. We didn't have the funds. It was a very expensive program where you get exposed to all the arts. And so we did that. And that's what really made me see art as a business. That was my first time seeing privileged kids just making beautiful art and being able to just sort of be in network with those students. It was very like eye-opening. I've never had that before. And I'm like, wow, like is this what life can really be? The food was great on campus, peace, walk around campus. You don't have to look around your shoulders. I slept well there, like pretty often. I didn't hear sirens, no gunshots all the time. So I said, man, you know what? I need to figure out what it is about drawing and painting that I love to do so much, because what I used to do in the hood was I would find like wood and just scraps around, and I would just set up anywhere in the alleyway and just paint something, and I would leave it in this community, or I would leave it I would go downtown where all the rich people were and leave it somewhere, and then somebody would pick it up. I would sit in the corner somewhere, someone would look at it and pick it up and take it. So I was like, oh wow, people really like my art, so let me continue to do this and see. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing at the time. I'm just like, oh, this is cool. This is fun. But eventually I started thinking about art as a business unconsciously. So anyway, in the program, I started to take painting a lot more serious. And most people don't know, I started out painting realism, real things, landscapes, people, things like that. So all my early work I don't own. I have no idea where they are now. But a lot of that was my real lifestyle art. And then from there, I took a detour because I realized that was just a fantasy. I didn't have the means to support myself in that way. Art is one of the most difficult careers to navigate through, and I was still young, and I still needed to survive and find a place to live. So I think I was pushing 22, 23 at the time. 22, I think. So anyway, because the program, we didn't get into the program until after the graduation. So we all applied to a program, and we all got accepted, which was crazy. We all got accepted. So now you got all these black males from the ghetto, and we stood out like a sore thumb. But people showed us love. The staff showed us love. They treated us like we were just like everybody else. And so it really drove us to want to be better people. And so that's the story on that portion of my life. And I stayed in Connecticut for a couple of more years until I felt like I couldn't escape death. And at this time, I was working 3 jobs. Yeah.
It's crazy. I felt like I couldn't escape death.
Yeah. It was inevitable. A lot of if I stayed. So towards the end of the year of our senior year in high school, a lot of our classmates were just getting killed left and right, getting locked up left and right.
These are the guys that you would go rollerblading with before the program. Some of your closest friends.
Well, one of them did pass away, but just general classmates. You would go to class one day
from high school.
From high school,
guys you grew up with. Okay,
mm-hmm.
Not the college, not the
no, not the CCY program.
Okay.
But you would go to class, and then the person is not next to you because they got murdered. You know what I'm saying? So it was things like that. But after graduation, you get it gets a little bit more how can I say shifty, because the streets become more territorial. The streets become a lot more protective. It was very chaotic that particular year. And I remember one morning, like the night before, let me back up a little bit. I was working at Walmart. I was working at Belden Jewelers. I picked up a jewelry gig because I wanted to learn how to sell. So I picked up a jewelry gig. So I had to learn how to wear a suit. I had to learn how to tie a tie. Like my father wasn't in my life, so I had to learn all this stuff from the University of YouTube. So I learned how to tie a tie. I went to thrift stores, buy my suits, stuff like that, and I ended up landing the job. So through that, I was able to make money to sustain myself to buy an apartment and a car. And I ended up picking a third job. I was working at JCPenney. And I ended up meeting a young lady through that job that told me about Huntsville. She was like, yeah, I'll go to Oakwood. I'm SDA. I had no idea what SDA was, right? But during that, Seventh-day Adventist? Okay. Yeah. Okay. But I knew about the Roman calendar. Like I was very privy on that because I love history. So I was looking at the calendar and all that before, but I had said to myself, you know what? I know I want to get out of New Haven. I want to get out of CT because there's a reason why my mother left to begin with. This place is not, sustainable for a Black man to try to be successful in the way that I wanted to be successful, especially in those neighborhoods. So anyway, I ended up praying, like really sincerely praying for the first time of my life, like giving it my all, like that real prayer where you're on your knees, your face is on the ground, like you're just really submitting your whole body to prayer. And I did that for the first time. I was like, man, you know what? I'm going to go crazy being here. Like I cannot. When I mean by escaping death, it was a shootout every day. It was that bad. It was a shootout every day. You got people trying to rob you. Almost got robbed trying to get food at the Chinese store. I got stuck up at gunpoint a couple of times. The police profiled me, slung me up against a wall, spit on me. It was all type of stuff going on out there, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, you know what? I gotta go. And I said, Lord, if you really want me to be out of this space, then give me a sign that I can't ignore. That morning I was going to my job at Walmart. And in order to get there, I had to get through the tray and go through the Ville. The Ville was one of the most ruthless neighborhoods. A lot of people got killed in the Ville. And so that was the only route I had in order to get to my job. So I was driving a Ford F-150 pickup truck at the time that I picked up from a guy down the street for like $3,000. And
that's the right vehicle to have, though, if you got to handle some business.
Yeah.
Put all your stuff in the back and it's probably going to go.
That's it. So I drove on my way to work. There was always this red light that I would get stopped by in the morning for work, and right dead in the center of the Ville, in the heart of the Ville. And there was a bus stop on the left side, and then there was an African braiding store here on the right side. And I just remember like the sun glistening, like it was just a beautiful day. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it's like 7:00 in the morning, and I'm like, man, it's beautiful out. Lo and behold, I see a guy running for his life, like just panicking. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I see a younger guy with can't make out the gun. It probably was a Glock, but he had a pistol. He had a gun in his hand. And I seen an elder and two kids, a girl and a little boy at the bus stop. The elder covered the kid's eyes, and the guy that was chasing the other dude cocked the gun back and shot him right in front of my car. And I was like, yeah, that's all I needed to see. That was the sign I prayed for the night before. That was it. And I went to work, and I ain't have a plan or anything like that. I went to work, and I was like, I went to my supervisor's office. I said, yeah, today's my last day. I went straight up. I said, today's my last day. And they were like, well, what's going on? What are you going to do? Like, why are you leaving? It's just like, man, I think I'm going to go back to school. As I said, I'm going to go back to school. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I needed to leave. So they gave me, just like, well, can you work at least a couple more days? Like, at least 2 more weeks to get, the rest of your pay, whatever the case may be. I was all right. So I gave them that agreement for the next 2 weeks, things were smooth. I didn't nothing happened like crazy in terms of violence, anything like that. But the young lady, I bring that up because the young lady who told me about Oakwood, she's like, you should apply. I'm like, I'm not going to get in. I know my GPA is trash. You know, I moved around too much in order to have a substantial grade point average. So I wasn't confident in that. But I did apply, and I met the requirement for like one of the lowest GPA requirements you can have. And so they accepted me. And I got the email at a random time, like 12 o'clock in the morning, like midnight, random midnight. And I had called the girl up. I'm like, hey, I just got accepted to Oakwood. And I'm all like livid. I'm happy, you know. So I sold my truck for tuition money. I did not have room on board. I didn't have enough to cover room on board. I just went on faith. So when I got down to Huntsville, I ended up using that money that I from my truck that I sold. I packed one suitcase, and I got a Greyhound ticket. I rode the bus. And so when I got dropped off at the Greyhound that used to be downtown, I figured out the pieces. I called the girl up, say, hey, do you know anybody with a car that could give me a ride to campus? So she worked that out. I got to campus, and I talked to administration, told them what my situation was. I said, I have nowhere to go. I don't have room on board. You know, I'm working on getting a job. You know, I'm trying to transfer my job from Walmart down here to see what that's going to do. That took forever. That didn't really work out like I thought it would. But I ended up using all my money to make ends meet for food and, you know, things like that. So from that point.
What year is this?
This was 2015. And I wasn't really creating like that at all during that time, but eventually I started like creating. They allowed me to stay in the dorms. They gave me like a very great discount because I guess my testimony was good. And a lot of that time was unlearning everything I did learn because Oakwood was just like a magical place, a fish out of water. And I gave my real testimony there, things I won't say on here in terms of like the things I actually been through, seen and did in terms of the community and stuff like that. And so a lot of the things that made me who I am today was because of that detour I had to take. So I started doing small shows in the library at Oakwood, just painting in my dorm room, putting them up in the library, sort of started trying to pick it back up to see if this is something for me. And I took up social work, because that was the only thing that I felt like was something I could do at the time, because I wasn't educated in anything else.
That's what you was majoring.
I was majoring in that, yeah.
In social work.
In social work. So I picked up a job at the Department of Human Resources as an investigator for Child Protective Services. So I did that for quite a while. And I would still paint. I would hang my paintings in my office, and everyone knew me in the office as the painter, you know. Oh, you know, that's Fudge, you know, he's a painter. My real government name is Neil Fudge. So everybody would call me by my last name, and they knew like I was an art-going person. But I needed to go through all of that so I can learn how to serve, and so that I can learn how to understand the precarities in the environment a little bit more deeper, because that's what my work is about now. And also the conditions and the marginalizations and the lack of access to things. That was my life. It was always my life, but I never looked at it in an art context. It was just a form of survival before. So moving forward, I started to get a lot of anxiety and depression from that job, and I needed to make a pivot. And so I met.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Why? Why were you feeling that way?
I was taking up a lot of the hardest cases that would come through that building. Like, I was the one who had to go through and see dead kids. I was the one who had to go through the roughest areas out here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was put in positions that could have got me killed, dealing with racists. out in the boonies that don't like black people with Confederate flags, and learning how to talk my way through it and tell them while I'm there, and getting guns pulled out and having the cops come and try to resolve the issue, walking in homes and seeing moms or dads passed out because they drugged up and stuff like that. And it was a lot for me to handle mentally. And I was like, I was bringing that. I ended up, having a new relationship at the time.
I imagine that job would be brutal under the best of circumstances.
Oh, yeah.
Like the very easiest part of that job is probably mind-blowingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, not even, just the job itself, but then having to defend your cases that you worked in court, dealing with the litigation part of things. So that was the worst for me because I didn't know how to speak the Queen's language that much. I had to learn how to fix the way I spoke. I had to learn how to adjust the slang a lot. But that was all intentional. It was supposed to happen that way. You know what I mean? Like, I'm able to do that now because I had to learn it the hardest way possible. So from that job, I ended up taking another hard leap of faith. And I ended up quitting that job to, what did I do after that? I left that job to go into teaching. So I was doing private teaching through Oakwood for like a program that was there. So I was doing art lessons for a while, and I was selling my paintings, and it sustained me for a little bit. And that's where like the rebirth of framing myself and my work as a business started to reform. And then eventually I said, let me integrate into the school systems to see how well I can like pour into the kids and sort of allow my gift to, influence them. And I gained a great relationship with the school system. And I was doing some teaching through them, currently doing some teaching through them. And I met a few mentors out here in Huntsville that were doing their thing in the art community, and was told to apply to the top school in the country because my portfolio started to develop and I started to talk about things that were a bit more purposeful. Instead of just creating things that I was feeling, I started to create things with more depth. And I was like, I'm not going to get in. I was always having this imposter syndrome effect. But, I learned how to deal with that. And I applied. I got it. I got accepted. The assistant director called me personally. It was like, yeah. Broke my work down from A to Z, exactly what I was thinking without telling her what I was thinking. And she said, we get a lot of applications. As you know, this is the Ivy League School of the Arts. And so the School of the Art Institute of Chicago is neck and neck with Yale in terms of the art program. They always toggle back and forth from the number one spot. And so she was like, you need to be here. Like, you need to be. And she was like, I shouldn't even be calling you. I'm not supposed to call you. But, I'm calling you right now because like, I love the work that you're doing, and I haven't seen work like this in a very long time. I said, wow. So we talked for about an hour, and I let her know my situation. Like, this is where I am. And she was like, we got to get you down here. So I ended up committing to SAIC. And since then, my life has been nothing but great for me. I guess there's some missing parts in terms of how I've structured business now, or, how I've been able to develop the artistic pathway right now. There's a lot of things I had to do to get to where I am now. But this is my testimony portion of things, and I'm watering it down a lot. But, for the sake of time, if anyone's listening, this is what made me who I am, and I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful. So, yeah.
So are you still enrolled in Chicago Institute?
I have one more year. In fact, I was on the phone with the curator earlier today about doing some exhibitions there that she was urging me. You need to do some shows here immediately.
You still stay in Huntsville though. So you're doing online. Is it online?
Yeah. So it depends on what I'm needed for. A lot of times I do a lot of traveling these days now, So I'll go to Chicago when there's a opportunity that I need to go and network for. So I do a lot of flying back and forth between here and other locations through the states. Chicago, I think I was there a couple of months ago. But in terms of the coursework, right now I'm doing things online, and during the summers I'm there to complete the rigorous portion of the program. And so right now I would say I'm halfway completed. Right now I'm working on my dissertation, creating my thesis right now and things like that.
Talking PhD.
It's how do I say, it's structured in that way.
Right.
So
thesis and a dissertation. I mean,
yeah. It's a pretty big deal. And so, like I said, I dealt with the imposter syndrome because it's like, I don't know if I was supposed to be here, you know. But I love everything about it. I'm learning.
So has the school changed the way you do your art? Like, how can the school teach an artist you got your own lane? Man. You know what I'm saying? Like, what has been the benefit of it? You know, when it comes to you putting paint to canvas.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, first I thought I was going to always be a diehard painter. That is not the case now. I'm more of a I do. How would I say this? I'm not boxed in anymore. So I create in different ways that allow me to dig deeper in certain topics. And art school teaches you how to research properly. Art school teaches you how to know what to look for. It teaches you to not be surface level, but to attack the status quo, actually. It allows you to not really consider the audience as much as you would. Like, typically, if you don't go to school, you're just creating things. And sometimes you fall into this sort of this system where you try to create a style. It's not necessarily about that. It's more about creating a voice. And you have to know how to create a voice of your own. And art school has taught me that it's okay to have multi-projects. You just have to know how to execute them. And just learning different materials, ceramics, projections, installations, textiles, sound. You get exposed to all of it. They make you get exposed to all of it. Learning how to build my own installations, learning how to work with wood and metal.
Installation?
Installations are things that you position in galleries that may drape or hang. They may be positioned on the floor as a pinpoint to the show. So some artists found objects and they may create a body of work from it and sit it in a particular location, or they may interlock fabrics. They may drape fabrics, hang it from the ceiling, or sing it ceiling to the floor, or ceiling to ceiling. It's a form of that type of art.
So is the installation the art itself?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yep. So I would say art school helps you learn how to study the topic that you're really interested in on a very fine level. And I don't think you could get that sort of exposure. You could get it on your own, but it may take you 10 years to get to this sort of information. Not only that, they have, any MFA program should have access to material that the public don't really have access to. And so I'm able to pull up access to a lot of material in the catalog that the public can't get access to.
When you say material, I'm sorry, would you explain? I know nothing about art, so.
I was able to see Frederick Douglass, the first photograph Frederick Douglass was captured from.
I understand. Sure.
Yeah. Certain things that you can't touch, like they were never showed in a museum usually, unless it was like a pretty big deal to show it at a particular time. But they hold these things in their storage or their storage, and a lot of that stuff has been sitting there for hundreds of years until an era, like a movement, comes back around. And
understood.
They pull it up and show it. But you have the liberty to go in and look at articles like. Last semester, we were able to go to that that vault and look at Nazi propaganda that they collected from Germany.
Wow.
So you get access to that. You could pull up all type of stuff, artifacts from Africa. Literally anything you could possibly think of, you can go and request it. Films that they don't show to the public. You could go in there if you want to enhance your practice. You have that access.
So it's almost an immersive way of learning. Am I understanding that correctly? You immerse yourself in so many different sensory inputs of all kinds.
Yeah.
How many senses are there?
They say it's 6, but I think it's about 7 because there's that spiritual factor that you can't see.
6, 7. Q says maybe 1.
One can touch. Everything is touch. That light touching my
I like
water
that.
touching my tongue.
Yeah.
Everything is touch.
Yeah.
All your senses. The vibrations of your voice touching my
I like that a lot. Yeah.
That's interesting. Words of wisdom from Q the Messenger.
Yeah.
There it is right there. Look, we're all looking at each other too like, that's some pretty deep shit right there. We're thinking about that. And you know, it's interesting. I just had a conversation with somebody recently, and I can't remember who the conversation was with, about sense of smell. All smell is particulate, which is particles touching your sensory, you know.
Yeah. I think about string theory, where everything is constantly moving. Even solid objects are made from atoms that are collapsing against each other. They just vibrate at a lower scale. The things that actually move like you and I vibrate at a higher scale. But so there's some truth to the idea of touch being something that can cover everything. Yeah.
That's interesting. String theory is one of those. Einstein called it what? Spooky science at a distance, or something. Not spooky science, but something spooky at a distance is the way Einstein described string theory.
Yeah.
Eric Weinstein.
Yeah.
I think actually Eric Weinstein does not. I think he actually refutes string theory. I think. I'm not sure. All those discussions are way above my, way above my intellect. Like I just listen to what the experts say, and I'm like, this person seems
credible.
Hey, listen.
Credible.
Can I get crazy for a second?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
It won't take a long time.
Yeah.
But something that always interests me, these conversations, one of the things that I find most fascinating is getting outside of my own comfort zone, getting outside of my own cultural influences, for lack of a better word. We all get in a lane, and then we kind of stay in that lane. And the more you, especially when it comes to social media today, the more you look at things, the more it sends you the same things you've looked at. Echo chamber. Thank you, Q. That's exactly the word. And so I think one of the most beneficial parts of this podcast to me has been exploring new ideas with people who may take a different perspective. You have a different perspective on life than either Q or I, because your experiences has been different. So with all that having been said, that was a hell of a lineup to say, what do you think about this damn election coming up, man? I'm not asking who you vote for or whatever. To me, that's kind of irrelevant. Man. I don't think that it kind of matters either way, quite frankly. I think the machine that controls our politicians is way bigger than the face that they, throw in front of us.
It's a circus.
It is a circus. But I'm a fan of the Joe Rogan podcast. Q and I talk about that quite a bit. I like any sort of a format that opens up long discussions.
Yeah.
And I think you can't really tell what somebody is all about in a short discussion. And so I guess a bigger question for me is, Trump just went on Joe Rogan. They spoke for 3 hours. I actually listened to it last night, and I'm not going to give any opinions or commentary on that. Everybody has their opinions. But I think that the decision to have a 3-hour conversation with somebody who's a lot of times made fun of him and, had this or that to say, I think that's what we need as a country. No matter what you think of that particular candidate, I think we need to hear from these candidates and find out what kind of person are you really. They do these debates and they stand up, and that's a circus. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. Sometimes there's 14 people on stage and they each get, 3 minutes? How can you make an opinion or, make yourself understood in 3 minutes? That makes no sense. So my question is, if Kamala refuses to go on Rogan, can she win? And then a follow-up question would be, should she win if she won't go on long-form conversations like that and really let people get to know who they are? Or can any candidate win? And should they be able to win? Shouldn't that be a requirement that we hear you? It doesn't have to be Rogan. It could be whatever. But, I want to hear a long conversation. I want to know what kind of person you are. I can't judge based on the sound bites that I get out there. Anyways, what say you, sir?
I think for me, I care less about what people say. I'm more focused on the actions, the traces of whatever they have done and whatever they've done to affect or improve things in the position that they hold. Because people can tell you anything, but their actions will always show you who they really are. So I think that if you have a good mouthpiece, you can talk your way through anything. And a lot of people can be deceived by the voice of someone or this sort of charismatic delivery. And, a lot of promises can be made. A lot of things could be said, but may not actually happen. And we've seen that through a lot of presidents. So for me,
most, I would say.
Yeah.
Don't you think most presidents, it seems like there's a lot of fluff beforehand.
But it's like you say, you talk enough, you'll dig yourself in a hole if you're not careful. So I think there's some truth to what you're saying about giving that person the platform to actually speak a little bit more about their principles and what they actually believe in and who they really are. But for me specifically, I need to see what have you done in your career path that has changed for the positive or for the negative of many other individuals, and that goes for Trump and Kamala. And everybody. And everybody, yeah.
That should be the standard that we judge history by, rather than opinions and whatever. Now, talk is, what was it Aerosmith said? Talk is cheap. Shut up and dance.
Yeah.
Money talks and bullshit walks. Whatever cliche you want to use. What have you done?
Yeah.
What have you done? Is the world a better place for you having been in charge, or is it not a better place? And if you can't say that it has been, then I might like you, but you didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
What a wise answer.
I mean, I've learned the hard way, thinking some people are my friends, smiling in my face, telling me anything, and then boom, I'm getting set up the next day because I trusted this person when I shouldn't have.
Well, I think you're much more of a person from the streets, if I can use that term. I don't mean it, in a negative way.
Yeah.
But you've experienced a life in the streets that I haven't, for sure. And I think probably Q hasn't maybe either to that level. Gang violence. You're right. That's crazy. That's crazy. But I forgot where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought completely. I'm just thinking about that lifestyle and what that must mean. And I remember where I was going with that. If you're literally fighting for your life, talk is cheap. What have you done for me? And if you're in an environment like that, I could see where your bullshit filter is probably very effective. Imagine very effective.
Yeah. I have this thing called reading people where you can sort of
discernment.
Discernment is a way better word to use.
Look at Q with the big vocabulary. What you been? Yeah, something's going on with Q. All right. Yeah. Discernment. It's a great word though.
Yeah.
So you didn't have that coming from the streets?
Discernment?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I can say that.
Or you had it, but when you get out of the streets, you think all people are good, or you turn it down some to where, okay, I'm more trusty now that I'm on Oakwood campus as opposed to being in the tray.
Nah, I think that those environments, those communities taught me that, it's wiser to be cautious. Because even let's say, I'm trying to think of an instance where I was in those programs when I was outside of that environment. I can't say that I didn't have familiar instances where people seemed nice, but they actually weren't. You know what I mean? But in terms of like discernment, before I went through the things that I went through as a youngin', I don't think that I had the awareness of discernment. I think that experience allowed me to have a more heightened sense of discernment, even still today when I'm doing business with particular organizations, or I'm cautious. I want to make sure you're not writing some crazy stuff in the contract. I want to, you seem nice and you're smiling and you're greeting me, you're treating me well, but business can get crazy. I've got screwed over through businesses before. You know what I mean?
Always read the contract.
Yeah, and they seem like nice people.
If there's a signature required, read what's on there before the signature.
Yeah.
If they look at you crazy, let them look at you crazy. But I'm going to read. Mm-hmm. I wonder if Elvis and some of those guys. We've talked about those crazy artist contracts where people really lose the rights to their own work. That
happened to me before. I was working for a company. I was doing brand development, so I was helping them create the brand identity for their company, sketches, designs, the whole 9 yards. When it got down to paperwork and getting compensation, they took everything that I contributed, and I was left in the dark. It actually happened to me twice.
If you work for a corporation, they consider everything you create when you work there their intellectual property, and it's going to be hard put to. I've seen contracts like that in restaurant business, so
it's dicey.
Yeah, it's very dicey, but that's what they have the lawyers to fight it. You might be right, but if you can't fight it, what are you going to do?
Nothing.
Wow.
Read the contract.
Well, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I guess coming from the streets, when someone don't like you, or someone's out to get you, or someone's a bad person. In those office boards and office rooms, it's hard to tell. You get what I'm saying? You got a smile, suit and tie on.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, it's fascinating. Like Bridgeport, they are rough around the most people in Bridgeport that have grew up there, they're a bit more rough around the edges. So they'll let you know, I don't like you. When you get to New Haven, they're a bit more slimy and snakish, grimy,
yeah.
And so the
Bridgeport is more in your face.
They're more in your face. New Haven is more of like a hey, how you doing?
That's the scariest.
Yeah. So
because you don't know.
Yeah.
I'm asking another loaded question. I'll stir the pot sometimes. I've learned from Q. I was raised in the North for the most part until I lived north of the Mason-Dixon line until I was almost 13 years old. So my youngest time was north. And then my earliest teenage and all through my teenage years, I've been in Georgia, small town in Georgia.
Okay.
And then North Alabama. This is where I've made my home.
Nice.
I was the son of a Vietnam veteran. And when it comes to racial issues, Vietnam was kind of a big equalizer.
Yeah.
Because, war in general, I think, you're not really worried about, if you went in a racist, you probably really didn't, it's results oriented, as you were saying. So in my home, those kind of things I didn't see it as much because you didn't come close to using racial terms in my house. My father was adamant about that.
Yeah.
But the question I have is northern racism versus southern racism. I've always heard that's a thing.
It is.
And I've had other black friends who've described it. Oh, you've experienced that too, Q. That's interesting to me. Like I've always heard in the North, people will smile at your face and talk smack about you behind your back, where at least in the South, they'll, call you names to your face. What's been your experience?
Yeah.
I'm going to hand this over to Q because I want to hear those comments too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm glad you said, man, this is great. So my experience of being split between the North and the South, living in both areas, the North has always showed me that, I'll say this, the South is more hospitality racism. It's like, we'll see you in the grocery store. We might say, hey, how you doing? Good morning. But if you cross that line, then we'll show you who we are. The North has a different feel to it. There's racism there. And most people don't think that because of, the whole slavery ordeal. But there's slavery in the North too. And there are more I want to say that there are higher classes in the North in terms of, I'm going to use this term for lack of a better word, uppity. And so there's a sense of entitlement and separation that happens in the North where you can tell that that they don't want you there. And I found more blatant in my face racism in the North versus the South. That has been my personal experience. Yeah. So like, don't get me wrong. Let's go back to the situation with DHR, me doing the investigation stuff there. Although I had anxiety, although I was dealing with depression working the job, when I had to deal with the racist people, I could sit there and have a whole conversation with someone that was racist. Like, I met this young lady who was, she had a little case or whatever, and she had a Confederate flag hanging up in her house. She welcomed me in. She was like, "Hey, how you doing?" Listen, I asked her about the flag because I'm here. I might as well ask. But it was such a different experience because it wasn't as if she saw me as, a slur. It wasn't. It was more of like this is part of my history. This is a part of my family. You know what I mean? So I hold this flag at a certain regard because my grandfather served in this. It was more of that than anything. So,
sorry to interrupt real quick, but your personal opinion, is the Confederate flag in and of itself racist?
All right, this is a loaded question.
Real quick.
So
okay.
here's
I want to hear your opinion too, Q. So microphone handed back. I want to know.
Most people don't know that the Confederate flag belonged to Black Americans first.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that history with that flag is very controversial.
So even more cultural appropriation. We can't come up with nothing on our own, can we? Thanks. That's the only thing white people can do, right? So, when you think about cultural things, I didn't know that. I don't know. Look, I'll give my opinion straight off the bat. To me, the Confederate flag is the flag of the losers. That's just how I feel about it. Like, why would you fly the flag of the folks that lost? I understand if you maybe had, I can understand the heritage thing, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But I'm a big believer in out with the old and in with the new myself, especially when the old was the ones that lost. Anyways.
Yeah. So I think that it could be used in a way that is weaponizing, just like the swastika was a symbol that was found in Africa. It was the Nazis literally turned the symbol around. It meant literally love, but then they turned around and reversed it, so it meant hate. It's a lot of that goes on.
I have heard that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
interesting. So in your opinion, if I'm correct in the way I understand it, a Confederate flag can be used as an instrument of hate, or it can be more benign than that?
I think now it's been stained enough for it to be represented as hate. I think now no one could ever acknowledge, even if you dig further enough in history, that it wasn't that originally. I think that, we might as well just call it a symbol of hate at this point because that's all we can recognize it as. I think the same thing for the swastika. I don't know if westernized culture can reverse that. So much that has happened with those symbols that you can't forget, So
I like that answer. I would say no, it's not a symbol of racism or hate, but just like Shay said, that's what everybody view it as now. It's been stained.
Mm-hmm.
So, which makes it, its perception is hate.
Perception is real.
Yeah.
Perception is reality.
Mm-hmm. Unless there's a way that the media could educate on a mass scale to talk about the origins, I think that's what it really comes down to. If the origins could stand the test of time and create the influence based on educating the masses, then maybe, but I don't see that ever happening.
Or maybe if I can just give my opinion, sometimes you just need to move on from something. You know what? Let's leave it where,
mm-hmm.
Confederate monuments. I'm of the opinion that they should be relegated to a museum. I don't think we should have mobs going down. We have to have the rule of law. This is a country based on the rule of law. And if anything done in a mob sense better be big enough to try to overthrow the government. Otherwise, let's just calmly take them down and put them in a museum. Have you know, we don't want to forget that we once did terrible things, right? Or that we once stood for bad stuff. So let's remind ourselves of a time when things weren't so bad, but maybe not sitting on the courthouse steps. I think that's a little.
You have the right idea, because there's an artist that he's also a curator as well, who's doing the exact same thing that you're saying. He's taking these monuments and he's putting them in gallery exhibitions as a form of remembrance, not as a form of
Auschwitz is still there, right? Didn't you say you've been to Auschwitz or one of the camps in Germany? No? But they're there, right? And you can see them. And okay.
The concentration.
But I mean, we've all seen pictures of a pile of shoes that's as tall as a building.
Yeah.
And it's still there. I don't want to go there. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to. I can't. I don't want that vibe in my head. But the knowledge that it's still there and been preserved as a way to learn. People can be violent. You know, we're bad to each other sometimes, and let's remember times when we did that, so we don't go back to that.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that if you did classify the Confederate flag as hatred, you would also have to classify the American flag as well. I bet it's more blood on the American flag than it is the Confederate flag.
Mm-hmm. And all the other iterations of the American flag.
Banner, was racist in itself if you hear the whole song.
Yeah. Let me ask y'all a question. If you remove the monument, but the foundation is still there, because we know that monuments have two pieces to it. We have the statue part, and then you have the foundation. If you only move the statue portion of the monument, is it still a monument?
It's too deep. They've even thought about it. I ain't even with that.
I'll stab it.
That deep with it. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll stab it. I got a bush beside my house.
I like where this is going.
I hate this bush. It's got thorns on the leaves. It's not in front of like my daughter's window to keep somebody from climbing in. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've cut it down with a chainsaw. I once put a whole box of salt right on the stump of it after I cut it off, thinking salt would kill anything. This damn bush, I can't get this thing to go away. And it's obvious that it's deep in the ground. And so there's a foundation to this bush that can't go away. Now, I'm sure I could dig it up. I haven't gotten a shovel and a pick out there if I wanted to and got serious about it one afternoon. And one day I'll be pissed off enough where I will. So that foundation is there, and unless I get real serious about digging out all parts of it, that bush is going to keep coming back, and I'm going to have to keep trimming it. My new strategy is when I cut the grass, I bag the clippings, and I've been pouring those grass clippings on top of it. It's hard for anything to live through those grass clippings. That's my thing. So I think one way to look at it may be that this foundation, if we don't rip the foundation completely out, get all of it gone, maybe to be like kudzu. We've talked, whatever it is, some kind of a vine. But maybe we put a little fence around the bush, and as it starts to grow back, we intentionally cut it back, and it's a reminder to ourselves that if we don't continuously fight against violence in general, hatred in general, against all of the things that make us worse as a society, we have to keep fighting at them. So we could rip the statue out by the foundation, or maybe we just put a little fence about it and put a little plaque there and remind ourselves that we're going to trim the weeds around this foundation. We're not going to let this get overgrown. But here it is for everybody to see. We once did bad things, and now we're better people than that.
So we call that in the art world reclaiming the site, going back to
reclaiming the site.
Reclaim it.
It's what we did at the Twin Towers in New York.
Yep.
We reclaimed that site.
Yep.
And now those buildings are bigger than ever.
Yep.
And that's kind of a big middle finger towards anybody that wants to tear us down. We're like that bush as a country. We're like that bush that never stops coming back. And so all of the ugly parts of us make us who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree to that.
I feel like I'm rambling. Captain Kirk in Star Trek. There was an episode of Star Trek where this person could supposedly put his hands on you and take away all your pain. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that episode as a Star Trek fan or whatever, but this guy was like a mythical, almost godlike creature. and he presented himself as being God, the God, like, whatever God you believe in, top of it. And he could put his hands on you and remove all your pain, and he would do it to people, and they would just seem like they had a sense of bliss come over him. And he offered Captain Kirk that. Captain Kirk gave this whole speech about, I need my pain. My pain is important to who I am. And if I don't have my pain, how am I going to know what not to do and what kind of person I don't want to be, and then I can mold myself into what I want to be. It was a powerful speech. Star Trek, kind of cheesy. It was William Shatner, but to me the sentiment goes clear. As a culture, if we don't remember the bad things we've done, then our arrogance is going to take over to a point where we're truly narcissistic. That's all I'm talking about. We've gone for a really long time. This may be the longest recording we've done so far. Oh. How long you think it's been, Q?
Since you said it is the longest, I'm just going to throw it out 120.
Oh, okay, 120. That's a long conversation, but it's been fascinating.
Yes, we need the struggles of life. You can't really know what your true character is if you're not tested. And I think the more tests you received, the more character development you need. And if you don't have that, you're going to make a lot of mistakes and regrets in your life. So I think how they say you can't have success without failure. You need to fail in order to succeed. You need to go through the fire in order to become that phoenix or like metal. In order to get that pristine shine, you have to go through the molding of fire. You know what I mean? It has to happen. If you don't, when trivial times really do happen, you're not going to be able to survive through it. And so I think that it's like the yin and the yang. It's very necessary to have that balance in your life, to be tested, to go through unforeseen circumstances, because that's really how you can really know who you are when it really matters the most. And I'll just leave it at that.
I love that. Q, take us out with something, man. What you got ready for us tonight? Give it a minute or two. Take us on out.
Well, for one, I just want to thank Ase for blessing us with his presence and giving us your testimony.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to say the word compelling. I was very intrigued. I know I probably asked a few questions here and there, but I could just probably listen to you continue to talk, and just tell your story. I just thank you for that. And I would say I've liked where you have come from. Like you said, the hard times that you experienced has made you who you are. That's why you're sitting here with us right now, and you haven't let those hard times defeat you.
Almost,
but they haven't.
Not enough.
You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And I would say you've moved your goal. You moved your goalposts. You're not still back in those times. Mm-hmm. When you was your upbringing. Mm-hmm. Your goalpost is here now. And you continue to move forward, and you continue to strive, and you continue to not let those hard times define who you are right now. They got you here, they created you, but that's not where you stop. Your story didn't end there, and I really appreciate that story, and I appreciate your transparency with us and just sharing that. And to the people out there, if you've experienced hard times, don't let those hard times defeat you. Don't let those hard times upset or debilitate your growth and you moving forward. Move that goalpost.
Yeah,
is what I have to say. Move that goalpost to now. Reset to now. Don't keep looking back and living in the past is what I'm trying to say, basically.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Out with the old, in with the new.
Out with the old, in with the new.
I've been saying that now for about 5 years. My wife is sick of hearing it. Out with the old,
in with the new.
I purged my house of stuff sitting around it wasn't moving me where I wanted to be, purged my life of people who weren't helping me be where I needed to be, out with the old, in with the new. I'm 53 years old, by the way. Yeah. They tell me I don't look that, but I know I look at least pretty close to it. But I think it's important in all facets of life to take a look at where are you now, to Q's point, where are you now? Not where you were, but where are you now? And set an appropriate goal. Have something to always be striving for, and have something to always be keeping yourself in the game, as it were. You know, okay, well, you ever heard the term resting on one's laurels? You know where that came from? So in the first Olympics, a laurel wreath was the prize that you won. There were no gold medals. You won a laurel wreath. So if you came back the next time around and you were just as good as you were the time before, you're resting on your laurels. You won the laurels before, and now you've been resting on that rather than trying to get better. Resting on one's laurels. It's a terrible thing to do. Close this out, Q. We've been a long time, man. I'm supposed to be the time. Like, I'm supposed to be the one keeping the time here or whatever, and I'm the one that talks the most. So anyways, what you got for us, man?
Hey,
I said that already.
Yeah, I pretty much gave everybody what I had. You know, stop starting way back then. You know, reset. You know,
reset.
Start now.
Let's leave them all with a big peace.
That's all I got, Shane.
Peace, love, and happiness.
Peace.